Knowledge for Men, episode 29.
Welcome to KnowledgeForMen.com, where boys turn into men, where men turn into leaders, into lions, the ferocious few who stand strong, a place where you grow to become the man you were born to be. It's time to take massive action towards the life you want. Get the health, get the relationships, business, and career you've always dreamed of. Achieve a level of success and happiness that you've been searching for so many years. Life has given you enough, and it's time to take a stand and take full control of your life. Stand with us as we interview the most inspiring and successful leaders to give you real-world advice to crush life and awaken the sleeping giant inside of you. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download today at kfmbook.com. There's over 100,000 titles to choose from for your smartphone, tablet, or computer. It's a perfect way to listen to your favorite books in the car, in the gym, or at home. Check out kfmbook.com to start learning in your downtime.
All right, guys, I'm here with John Ruhlin, the co-author of Cutting Edge Sales, Confessions of Success, Influence, and Self-Fulfillment. John founded the Ruhlin Group in college as a way to market Cutco as a high-end corporate gift to companies of all sizes. And this partnership with Cutco has allowed the Ruhlin Group to become the #1 distributor of Cutco in their 60-year history out of over 1 million other distributors. And this has totaled in over $250 million in Cutco sales. So basically, John's moving a lot of sharp objects. And he also specializes in philanthropy, connecting leaders with leaders, developing world-class sales culture, and private equity. John's on the show because John can teach us something about giving value, building relationships, and overcoming failure. John, I'm happy to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
All right, let's go ahead and get started with your favorite success quote and why.
I would say that the core thing that in the last 13 years has resonated, and kind of a philosophy I built myself around, is give more than is reasonable. We're in the high-end gifting business, so that's kind of a core value, which is kind of obvious, but really in all areas of life, I think a lot of people hold back 5 or 10% in relationships and how they treat employees and really just everything. They kind of hold back. They don't want to be quite vulnerable to go across that line and give that extra amount. And so we're protective. And so I think that when you give more than is reasonable, that's when special things happen.
You have a really good point there. And I think over-delivering on something is just such an underrated skill that people just aren't doing these days. It's like people want to do the bare minimum just to get by, and in your relationships or in business, just really over deliver and give more value than what you're asking for. And it's worked really well for me. Now, John, let's go into your story. Let's jump into your journey of how you got started with what you do, and we'll dive into some of the lessons you learned.
Yeah, so it probably helps with a little bit of a backstory. I grew up on a farm in Ohio. I live in St. Louis now, which is where my wife's family farms a couple thousand acres in southern Illinois, so that's why I'm in St. Louis. But originally born and raised in Ohio, one of 6 kids, and so grew up relatively, I don't want to say poor, but definitely lower middle income, below. So didn't want for food or shelter, but definitely wanted for a lot of the other things. And so we farmed 50 acres, we grew everything, had a 1-acre garden, worked our butts off. And I got straight A's in school. I was a pleaser, definitely an overachiever in that regard. And so if you're poor and you don't have access to a lot of things and you get good grades, you go be a doctor or a lawyer. So I went to school pre-med, and I'd started a small business working for Time Warner Cable, and fell off the ladder twice and got lucky, landed in mulch both times. And so I was like, I'm going to go be a doctor, but I'm going to end up being a patient and end up a paraplegic working on these power lines. And so I started looking for other options. And so I interned with a company called Cutco. And I was fortunate at the time when I interned there, I wore glasses to look smarter. I wore the one tie that I had, and because I was so nervous, and because I'm not really naturally a salesperson. And went into the interview, got hired, and started. And fortunately, I was dating a girl at the time, and her dad really changed my life forever. He was an attorney, but he made most of his money off of things that were not attorney related. So seemed to be involved in like the bank in the town. He was involved in oil wells, real estate. And he was the most generous person I'd ever met up until that point. He would find a deal on noodles and like buy a semi-load, and everybody at church would end up with like a year's supply of noodles. Or the school would have an auction for like a Harley Davidson. He'd buy like a third of the tickets and end up giving the Harley back after he won it. So he bought a set of Cutco for himself and his 3 daughters. And I was so green. It was like, I said, John, I want to help you hit your goals, but I don't know what else I can buy from you. Now, that question like rang in my head like for days. And so I came back and I pitched him this idea of engraving a pocket knife with his name on it. And he got this little twinkle in his eye and he said, what if I engraved could you engrave a paring knife or some of these other pieces? And I looked at him like, why would you want a paring knife? All your clients are these like big time executives and business guys. And he said, John, all the guys are married. And if I take care of the wife and the whole family and focus on them, everything else takes care of itself. If you put it in the kitchen, it's the best marketing tool on the planet. And so that launched my thinking, my confidence, everything. It changed me because I had this guy who was ultra successful, ultra generous, was pouring into me and believed in me. And so from that point forward until I was a senior in college, I started hiring people and started trial and error, learning about how to sell these knives as gifts, and started to understand it wasn't about the knife at all. It was about the personalization, the timing. And so by the time I was a senior in college, I was the largest international distributor for Cutco and soon became their largest international distributor in the history of the 60-year company. And it wasn't because I was the best salesperson, but I got very good about understanding and applying a lot of what Paul taught me as principles in building relationships and understanding how to do when everybody else was giving something cheap. I taught people how to use something really nice and classy. When everybody else was focusing on the executive, I'd focus on their wife or their husband, and really developed this curriculum to teach from professional sports teams to wealth managers to insurance brokers to anybody that's dealing with the affluent. We got very good at understanding relationships and how to leverage tangible entertainment value versus taking them out for food and wine and golf and hunting and all the stuff that most executives do. And so now we have a firm that literally leads with education and leads with teaching. And then oftentimes they come back to us for the execution of how do I get to my dream 100 prospects? How do I have 1,000 employees. I don't want to just give them a $2,000 bonus. How do I build meaningful relationships? So sorry for the long backstory, but really what we do is built upon a lot of what we've learned because I didn't grow up around affluent people. That wasn't my circle. So I had a lot of learning to do in the last 13 years about what to do and what not to do because I did a lot of the wrong things at first.
Yeah, and everyone's going to make those mistakes in their life or in business, but do you have any big mistake or challenge or failure that you had to overcome in your journey to get to where you are now?
Ironically enough, the one that sticks out of my mind is the girl that I was dating. Like I had the ring and was ready to propose, and that relationship just crashed and burned. I was thinking we're going to be married and whatever else, and so I remember my senior year in college, the last semester, I didn't want to get out of bed. I was sleeping like 14 hours a day. I got to the point where I actually had to borrow money from my assistant to pay bills. And so pretty depressed. I haven't shared that with very many people, but pretty depressed time. I remember I had a number of friends that were pouring into me and helping me. And I went from literally all A's to barely passing some classes and wasn't selling. And I had a guy that started with Cutco that, the manager of the office asked me to kind of mentor him. And he took me down into that same Amish area that I was selling in before and started to basically took the focus off myself and started pouring into him. And that summer, he sold more than any new rep ever had sold, at least in a number of years. And I had my best summer ever because we were partnered up together. And he was helping me just as much as I was helping him, even though I was like the 4-year veteran. And I think the other thing that I started to realize was I could either wallow in self-pity or I could use that frustration and anger as motivation to prove the haters wrong, which one of them being she wasn't a hater, but that relationship rejection was huge. It just crushed me. And so I could either crumble under that or I could go out and prove some people wrong. And so I think between having somebody to mentor and take the focus off of myself and the loathing and self-pity, and also channeling the anger in a positive way, turned a failure into immense growth, graduating from college and deciding to keep on with the business and keep growing and keep trying. And things really exploded after that point.
Hey, that's actually a huge challenge that I think every guy is going to experience in their life. And when you're there, or if you're there and you're listening, I mean, you feel like you're at rock bottom. You feel like you're dying inside. I mean, just this one girl and it's like the world is over. It's a really challenging position, but I found through each of the breakups that I've had in my own experience, it's like huge, tremendous amounts of growth come from each breakup, and it just makes you that much stronger, but you got to find that courage to keep going. So John, how did you find the courage to keep moving forward and pursue personal development and build your business? And how did you continue to grow despite that breakup?
Honestly, I don't know if you're a person of faith or not, but for me, faith has been a huge part of my foundation. Following Jesus, like principles, core values is a huge part of who I am. And so I remember like literally crying, like just bawling after an experience interacting with this girl and knowing that things were over. And for whatever reason, I got this sense of calming. And I remembered parents went through a divorce when I was younger. And I remember thinking that like what was a horrible situation, my stepdad poured into me and was an amazing man. And it instantly took me back to that point of feeling like desperate and whatever else, and seeing what God did through a bad time, through a horrible situation that seemed like just destructive and no good could come out of it. And I remember thinking that if good could come out of a divorce and a bad situation there, that good could come out of this situation, and I wasn't going to let it ruin me, and that he had bigger plans. And so it wasn't like everything was rosy after that point, but there was just this kind of like in the back of my mind, in the back of my heart, this core that I knew things were going to work out. I didn't know how or why or what it was going to be, but that was kind of like at least a little bit, like I was just longing for a little bit of something to hang on to, like a little bit of peace. And that was the peace that I needed to kind of like, okay, take it a day at a time. It wasn't long after that I started working with that kid and mentoring the other Cutco rep. And, that summer just really blew up. Just crazy things during certain sales contests and whatever else that I couldn't even explain started to happen, and things just really clicked. So I feel bad or feel sorry for people that don't have that faith foundation and something that's bigger than themselves to kind of lean on in hard times. Because at least for me, for my own experience, that's been the rock. There's been great people it's not been like me and conquering the world with God, but there's definitely been other people, but that core value has been huge.
Okay, and what would you say are some of the biggest lessons you've learned in this whole journey of yours, from the breakup to building this business and just overall in life?
Gosh, I mean, obviously there's a lot. There's a lot of things. One being like at that point in time, looking back, I really wasn't ready to get married as much as I thought I was. Like I've grown a lot as a person. I realized that I think I was starting to read my own press, and there was a certain arrogance that was coming into play that probably resulted in the relationship ending the way that it did. And so humility, I think, is a huge thing. Not realizing or not forgetting where you came from, and big as any of us get, we're still human beings that are broken, and definitely was served up some humble pie and some humility and all of that, but also realize that there's redemption and opportunity even after crushing blows like that. Like if I could go through that losing a sale or whatever else was not going to be that big a deal. And I think that the people that I look at that are most successful have gone through some of the most turmoil, and I think that they have perspective on things. And I'm not saying that my brother went through loss of a child, which I think would be one of the biggest blows you could ever go through, and seeing him handle that and go through some dark periods, but to come out a better human being. I think over the last 13 years, I've just tried to take a step back and learn. I think after that experience, I started taking a month off. Up until I was married, the last number of years with kids, I haven't been able to do that as much. But up until I was married with kids, I would take a month off, usually in January, and go try experiences I'd never tried before. I went ice climbing with a crazy friend of mine, Carl Drew, out in Ouray, Colorado, the ice climbing capital of the world. Just pushing myself out of my comfort zone and starting to hang out with people that are not always like me. I went and did a yoga retreat in raw eating, actually in San Diego. The Optimum Health Institute for a month. Was there, like, nothing, no meat, all vegan and all raw for 4 weeks. But I ended up meeting Kevin Mitchell in the sauna at 24 Hour Fitness down the street. He's a MVP baseball player. We ended up going to the World Series reunion of the New York Mets. And so surrounding myself with other people, trying new experiences, realizing that failure isn't final, been a lot more aware of health and man, there's so many. In one 45-minute interview, I mean, we could probably take any one of those things and dive in, but there's been a lot.
Okay, I can help. And let's just say, that we got a couple thousand people listening to this podcast right now, and there's a few of them are going through some, or even a large majority of them could be going through some really tough time or some big challenge that they need to climb out of. What kind of advice do you have for these guys to help them get through that tough time?
Yeah, I think as men in general, I think oftentimes we want to keep things to ourselves and act like everything's okay. And I think that now more than ever, it's okay to be transparent and be real and be honest that, we don't have it all together. We do have challenges, whether it's in our marriages or whether it's in our relationships or our job. I think authenticity, you look at like a Gary Vaynerchuk and these guys, like they want you to be real and authentic. And I think people, it doesn't have to be the pretty picture. I mean, that's why we can do things on Skype or on little, random video cameras, because people want to see that you're a real person. They want to see the cracks. And so I think that as guys, women are better about communicating and reaching out for help. But I think that building that circle of people around you that are positive, that are go-getters, but that are real and not posers and that are willing to be vulnerable. For me, I find that in my church and I find that in my small group of having guys that I can be honest with and pour into and they can hold me accountable. But a lot of guys want to do it on their own, and there's that macho ego that gets in our way that we don't want to be honest about our brokenness and what's going on. And so I think that, when you're going through those challenges is why you build the relationship of men around you that have your back and can pour into you. And if you don't have that group, then you need to find new groups of people to hang out with, because we're not made to do this alone. We're made to do this in community. And so I think that's why one of the cool things about your blog and posts is, to pour into guys and to learn and grow and develop. And, there wouldn't be a need for that if we all had it all together and, we're all rocking and rolling 100% of the time. Like, that's just not true and authentic.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think a lot of guys would agree with what you said. They know that they should reach out and find other guys. But I think a challenge that some of them experience is not being able to find those people. Like, where can they go to find the right people that can really help them get to the next level?
Well, I mean, if you're not to make it over religious or spiritual or whatever, but there's some amazing churches out there. I mean, I've been a part of a lot of the groups that I'm a part of. Probably half of them are somehow spiritually based or tied into the Christian faith. EO, which is Entrepreneurs Organization. There's 9,500 members worldwide. Now there's a minimum revenue to get into that organization and what have you. But for guys that are running businesses, a lot of times when you're the boss, you're even more alone than you are as an employee somewhere. So being able to be open and honest about numbers and challenges and hiring and whatever else, that group is fantastic. I've been a member for 7 years, and they have small groups that meet literally for half a day a month to you talk about marriage issues and you talk about kid issues, you talk about business issues, everything is on the table, and it's 100% confidential. So I think there's some business forums and groups. I think there's mastermind groups that are out there that, depending upon which ones they are, they can be more authentic and be more real and talk more than just about business, because we're, as much as we want to say we're, business minded focused, we're still a human being and we have other issues that cloud judgment or affect our business lives. So having a mastermind group where you can, even if it's 4 or 5 guys that can be open and honest about things in a confidential way, I think is huge. So.
And this brings up a relevant quote by Jim Rohn: "You are the average of the 5 people you spend your most time with." And that's true in your relationships as far as your business and your health. It does everything. So, I mean, no matter if you're in a business organization, a church organization, or like a sport or a hobby, just being around high quality people is going to really have a huge impact on your life overall. And now, John, it's time that we enter the knowledge round. Are you ready?
I am ready. As ready as I'm going to be.
For you, the listeners of the Knowledge for Men podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their awesome service. And you know what? Something I've noticed after interviewing hundreds of successful people is that they all read a ton of books. If you want to be successful, you've got to educate yourself every day. I don't always have time to sit down and read a book, so I personally recommend listening to audiobooks in your car, in the gym, or on the go. You can pick up for free any one of my favorite best-selling books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, How to Get Rich by Felix Dennis, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, The Education of Millionaires by Michael Ellisberg, The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco, or any other audiobook you want. Audible has over 100,000 titles. To download your free audiobook today, go to kfmbook.com. Again, that's kfmbook.com for your free audiobook today. Start learning, growing, and becoming the man you want to become now. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime.
All right, John, how would you explain becoming successful to a newcomer?
I think for me, I think it's recognizing most people view success, and I know that I did growing up without a lot of money, as success would be when I had a certain amount of money. And I think that now that I've been around enough successful people that have money that aren't happy, it's recognizing that success is a holistic, success is different. First off, for every single person, like what we want is all different. And I think it's easy to get confused and view it as what other people have or do or want. And I think success is an individualized where you're content and happy and with what you have.
I like that. So focusing on the internal versus the external.
I would agree 1,000. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, John. And what was personally holding you back from becoming the man you are today?
And first off, I'll say that I'm still trying to reach that contentedness and that joy and peace. I have it at times, but there's so much noise out there and so much distraction to take you, so many messages telling you that this is in order to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to have a certain size building or a certain size amount of employees. So for me, it was just perspective was holding me back of understanding that I don't have to have a certain size company or whatever else to be successful. I don't have to have a certain amount of employees. I could define success as I wanted.
All right. And what's the best advice you've ever received from a mentor?
Actually, it goes back to that initial statement of give more than is reasonable. And that was what Paul lived and did. He didn't even have to tell it to me. He could see it in his life. And that's something that I've tried to emulate. I've done a better job probably in the last 5 years of realizing it's not just with gifts, but it's in all areas of my life. Even in my marriage, I held back. I didn't want to be completely vulnerable, or I didn't want to give up certain things because I felt like I deserved them. And so that giving more than is reasonable is kind of a mantra and pretty much the best advice I've been given.
All right. And what are your 3 most influential books and why?
For me, initially, the first business book I ever read was Raving Fans, a Ken Blanchard book. It really kind of changed my view of how to interact in a business manner. Right up with that was John Maxwell book, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I pulled so many nuggets from that, giving speeches my first 5 years of business and just that kind of core philosophy. Recently, a book that's really impacted me and kind of how I'm changing my views of giving and understanding business, Give and Take, by Adam Grant. Phenomenal book. Really for me, the Bible is kind of the unspoken, kind of automatic, but from a business and just overall development, those first 2 books were, first off, they were the books I read because of choice, not because college told me I had to, and kind of got me hooked with kind of being a knowledge addict and wanting more. And so I became a reader by choice, not because I had to at that point.
And John, what's one action one person can take right now that would get them closer towards their goals?
It's something a mentor of mine just recently did, and I'd say I did it with the month-long retreats, but do a 3-day solitude and take 3 days and shut off all technology and all noise and go spend time with just yourself and out in nature and shut it all down so it's actually quiet enough where you can actually hear your own thoughts, your own dreams, your own visions of what you want. It's something that doesn't cost a dime, and that even somebody that's working somewhere can schedule a 3-day vacation to go and just shut it all down. Tell a couple people where you're going to be. Go to there's different cabins and places that are really remote, but I don't think that we can really figure out what we want until there's some quietness. I don't think enough of us take that time to go search for that.
Wow, that sounds like great advice. I would recommend that for a lot of guys who are especially feeling kind of like lost or unsure of their purpose and what they're doing. I think that's a great opportunity to really figure out, what you want to do with this life.
Highly recommend it.
I'm going to have to check that out. Have you done that recently, John?
Up until I was married with kids, I did it a lot, but some of my best ideas and some of my best thoughts came from when I shut it down and technology wasn't around.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to have to check this out and see what it's all about, and I'll come back to you with some of my results.
Once a year.
Sounds good. All right, John, and I got a scenario for you. Imagine you woke up and you were 20 years old again, and you just had a laptop and $1,000. What would you do?
It's funny, as I did that, I wasn't 20, I was 23. I went to China for a month with a laptop, and that's my first ever real kind of document that I've ever written. I took my laptop and I traveled China, went to 12 cities in 30 days. Probably cost me, I think my plane ticket was just under $1,000, but I wrote for 2.5 hours my thoughts about business. And once the laptop was dead, I put it away and enjoyed the day. And a good friend of mine was from there. and he was kind of my personal tour guide, but did the Great Wall. I did 8 new foods. It was like literally the best trip that I've ever been on. If I had to do it all over again, I'd do that exact same thing.
That's actually the first time I've asked a guest that, and they're like, I've already done that.
Yeah, it was amazing. In a whole new culture and environment. It wasn't like going to like Hawaii or going to Mexico, Cabo or something. It was like Asia is a whole nother world, and in a good way, but it's very different than the U.S.
And probably there's just so many people and you're so far away. And you're probably like one of the only,
Oh, yeah. And a lot of them have never seen a Caucasian white dude. I'm not a small guy, 6'3", and I didn't shave for like a month. So I look like the woolly mammoth. It was crazy.
You're like a lost Yeti in China, an American white Yeti.
I was like the American Yeti.
All right. And now we're getting deep. If you had to write your obituary today, what would it say?
I know we have influence on what our obituary says, but it obviously our perspective, what other people's perspective is different. But I hope it would say that I was a guy who his faith and his family were of utmost importance, somebody that was a giver, somebody that connected well with people and had his priorities straight and lived every day to the fullest.
And we're not done yet with deep questions. The next one is, what is your philosophy on life?
We're put on this earth with a purpose. There is a bigger creator that put us on earth with a purpose, and that to give and to love and to serve. And it's not all about us, although we oftentimes think it is. That there's a bigger purpose behind what we're doing. And this life is only one segment of a longer eternity. And so don't take what we have for granted and just assume that it's all about us. I think it's about others. It's about serving. For me, it's about helping people understand how they can spend eternity and what life's all about. So for me, it's about sharing faith. But at a core level, it's about loving people and impacting them for an eternity.
Well said, John. And as we're coming to a close here, do you have any parting piece of guidance for the listeners today?
You pulled some of my gold nuggets earlier on, man. At a core level, there's all kinds of stats that say if income's your goal, like the 8 people that you hang out with most often, you're going to be within a couple percentage points of that. The people you're around and the books that you read, what you pour into your mind and your head and what you're doing, all of that matters. And that's who we become. We become our habits and become the people that we're surrounding ourselves with and the stuff that we're putting in our heads. So don't take for granted that you're going to be this amazing human being by hanging out with punks. Don't assume that we can't compartmentalize our life. It's all intertwined. It's all tied together. As much as, especially as guys, we think we can put this over here and act this way over here and act this way over here. I think being congruent with who we are in all situations and realizing that it all does matter. The little things, the details, all matter. How we treat the person that's riding the train with us, how we treat the waitress, all of that has an impact, and there's a ripple effect from all of that. Andy Andrews, one of my favorite authors, talks about it. What you do matters to me, and what I do matters to you. Even if we're not connected, it's having an effect on our world and the people. And I think a lot of times we think, well, I can do this, nobody's watching. Well, that's not true. There's a cause and effect to everything, and not that we have to live our lives in fear, but we should live our lives on purpose and intention of how we're doing those things and how we're treating people. And I think it all matters.
All right. Great way to close. And I'm glad I was able to get that last ring right out of you. Got all the knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's going to conclude the knowledge round, John. And what's exciting you today? What are you currently working on?
Yeah, so what's exciting me today is for a long time, I never really considered myself a salesperson. I also never considered myself a speaker. But I've realized that if I want to have impact, speaking publicly is something that I've done, but I've kind of done begrudgingly just at times. I would refer out to other people like Hal and Peter and Carl Drew and John Maxwell, other guys that I knew. I'd say that's the guy you need to speak. And I think that realizing that my message of being memorable and understanding how to build relationships in a long-term meaningful way, leveraging tangible gifts and appreciation and kind of the detail stuff that I talk about, that matters. And and it resonates with people. And a lot of people there's nobody out there really speaking those things into existence and teaching that. So transitioning from an occasional consultant to a full-blown speaker and not really product focused at all is really what I'm working on and excited about. Getting a chance to speak to EO internationally up in Toronto this coming year, which is first time ever doing something like that. So I don't know what the title of the book's going to be. It might be Give, 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 Ask, or, kind of playing off of Vaynerchuk's jab, 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 right hook. Because really, at the end of the day, that's what he talks about is give. He's talking about adding value on social media. I'm talking about adding value tangibly. Messages are the exact same, just one's a little bit different. So that book and really just growing my speaking business and my business partners are on board with it. They're excited about it, and I'm excited to just have a bigger platform to share that message and see how it impacts people in their business and personal lives.
Absolutely. I think you're making a huge difference and your message is very strong and it should be heard. So when do you plan on releasing this book?
I think the book will be done by the end of next year. The speaking platform and whatever else, and we've been fortunate to get some Inc. magazine articles, which I can send to you, that just recently got posted, and I think one of them got shared like 1,300 times in the last 3 weeks, which is actually Inc. reposted it on their Twitter account to their 800,000 followers. So I'm starting to write more and really trying to just put as much thought leadership out there as possible, and really at the end of the day, take all of that thought leadership and package it into a book that's easy to understand and implement. So the goal is to spend the first 6 months of the year writing as much as possible and getting stuff out, and then aggregating it the second half of the year.
All right, John, go ahead and leave yourself a plug so all the listeners can get in contact with you in the future.
Yeah, if they can follow me on Twitter at Ruhlin, at Ruhlin. They can drop me an email if they have questions or what have you to my personal email, which is John, John, at ruhlingroup.com, and Ruhlin's Ruhlin, and then GROUP, all one word.com. If they Google John Ruhlin, and a number of articles and whatever else will pop up, and they can check things out there, and if they like what they read, if they have questions or what have you, happy to be followed up with and answer those questions.
John, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your amazing story and life lessons with us today.
Thanks, Andrew, for having me, man. Congrats on all your success with this show. It's super impressive. All
right. That's going to wrap up episode 29. I'm not even sure which one it is. I think it's 29. That's going to wrap up episode 29, you guys. And real quick, little update. Man, I got to say that today, the Knowledge for Men podcast hit 250,000 downloads within 3 months, because tomorrow would have actually been the third month. So I'm actually did it within 3 months. So I guess like 89 days, 250,000 downloads, 250,000 downloads from over 150 countries. And a little tidbit of information there is that the majority of all the downloads will come from California, obviously coming from the United States, and then come from California, and then New York, and then specifically the most popular city is Los Angeles. This is actually the most popular city where by far that listens to the Knowledge for Men podcast. There's a large percentage of people in Los Angeles area, and also San Francisco, Chicago, and New York, like I mentioned earlier, but New York City. And I guess, cities with the largest populations, right? Very metro, and also just a quick shout out to people in Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, Singapore, China, Philippines, Germany, Japan, India, Sweden, Malaysia, Brazil, Mexico, Korea. That's South Korea, actually. And Spain, Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, Switzerland, Hong Kong, South Africa, Russia, United Arab Emirates, Thailand, Ethiopia, France, Norway, Taiwan, Netherlands, Panama, New Zealand, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Poland, Myanmar, Israel, Qatar, Jamaica, Sierra Leone, Belgium, Turkey, Denmark, Ireland, Costa Rica, Czech, Italy, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Austria, Luxembourg, Hungary, Iceland, Trinidad, and Tobago. Man, I didn't even know that was a country, but they're listening to my podcast. That's so cool. And Romania, Ghana, Egypt. And that's really going to make up the majority of it all. However, the top 3 countries are going to be obviously United States, Canada, United Kingdom. I think it resonates with that audience. Also, Singapore is up there as well. Australia and China. Philippines not far behind. All right. Yeah, it's really cool. It's really exciting. So for those of you that have been listening, this is great. This is awesome. This is growth. And I'm really happy that I'm able to say this. It even just kind of gives me the chills just saying this, because I honestly would be really happy right now if I would have hit like 50,000 downloads and 3 months in. That's a lot of people who listen to my podcast. So to hit 250,000 and just to continue growing that's just insane. It blows me away, and it really inspires me and shows that, there's a lot of guys that want this content. And I know that, you're listening and you're like, the audio quality or this or that. Like, I do see some reviews about some of my, my audio quality, but man, you got to know that, I'm just a guy who had a vision and put this thing together. I have no recording background. I have no podcasting background. I just saw a need, and I knew that other guys would want this type of content. I love this content. I'm a student of my own podcast. I love listening to what the guests have to say, and it's just been an incredible journey so far. But overall, podcast, not the best quality. It is improving, I can assure you that, as I learn more about audio recording and just production. And there's been some people who've actually reached out and given me some tips. So thank you for that. You know who you are. And that's it. The lesson there is, like, you want something, go do it. Just go do it. I mean, that's what I did here, and it worked. I had a big pain point, and that was I couldn't find a men's podcast. I couldn't find a men's blog. I really couldn't find a men's website or community of men that wanted to just improve in all areas of life, not just in one specific area like bodybuilding or trying to, pick up girls or trying to make money, but really find a central community of like-minded guys that want to improve their life and take their life to the next level, because that's what this is all about, is really just pushing ourselves every day and growing and challenging ourselves to become the best man that we can become. And through these guests, it's like we're learning little tidbits of information that all add up. And 29 episodes in, 250,000 downloads later, that's an impact. I just got to say, like, if you are listening to this podcast and it's good and you're learning a lot, I think there comes a point in your life when you got to stop listening to this podcast. And I think no podcast person would ever say that. But I really care, and I understand where you're coming from, and you got to sometimes stop consuming content and really just start producing results. So I'll say that one more time, is like, you got to stop consuming content, which is reading books, attending seminars, watching YouTube videos, reading this and that, which is all really good content. But there comes a time when you know enough to really get the life you want, and you got to start taking twice as much action as you are consuming content. And I think this is really when you start to see, maximum results in your life. So if that means you have to stop listening to the podcast, then do it. And I'll take the hits on the downloads. I'll do it, and, you go grow and then come back. I'll still be here. I'm still grinding out, and, maybe share it with your friends while you're doing your thing and you're taking action and you're failing, you're going through the challenges, you're climbing up the mountain, and I'll be cheering for you all along the way, because, man, I love this. This is it, man. This is it. So I think I'm saying this is it because in T. Harv Eker's episode, that was his quote. But if you haven't checked that one out, check it out. And if you're more interested in being surrounded by like-minded individuals who are doing these types of things together, trying to improve their health, their wealth, their business, their relationships, trying to get the women they want, or improve their existing relationships and just continuously grow, so in every aspect of life, in the 4 pillars, which I believe make a remarkable life, then I have a mastermind group called the Lion's Den. It's the official mastermind group for Knowledge for Men. And you can find out more if you just check out knowledgeformen.com/lionsden, or just go to knowledgeformen.com, and it's in the menu tab right there, Lion's Den. And you can read up more about it, and you can schedule an appointment with me on that link. And it just goes straight to my calendar, and you select a 15-minute time. We can see if it's right for you, and we'll go from there. But we're seeing tremendous results with some of the guys inside the group. So I highly recommend checking it out. It doesn't hurt. And if you just want to shout out and say hi, go ahead, check out the Lion's Den. And from there, you can schedule an appointment with me for 15 minutes. All right. Anyways, this is a little rant. Thank you for supporting Knowledge for Men. This is only the beginning.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast show. It's been a pleasure having you be a part of a thriving community of men who want to crush it in all aspects of life. I'm on a mission here to inspire millions of guys, and with your help, we're going to make a dent in the universe. Check out knowledgeformen.com for a ton of free content that's designed to help you live a remarkable life. Again, that's knowledgeformen.com. I hope to see you there. And always remember, 2014 is the official year of the crush, where we take action to get the life we've always dreamed of. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, and until next time, let's do it.